These panels start off as a piece of particular foam board material. I'm gonna teach everybody how to shoot a panel. The same way I shot it, I'm gonna show everybody again. And everything I do is all on YouTube. It's not that hard. If you follow the instructions I tell you, your panel will dance like this, very simple. This is how your metal flake should look like. Now, this one I shot over silver, and this is full coverage, and if I missed a spot, you don't notice it. Now, Mo Diaz, we did Paint Tricks 1 with Mo, and Mo loves to shoot over black. I also like to shoot over black. It gives it a nice dark undertone to the color. So, and if you miss a spot, you can kind of see and you can come back. But what I like about black is that it gives it a little bit warmer color versus when you do it over silver like this, it's really bright.
And also black works in the sense where if you want full-on coverage, you keep flaking out till you don't see no more black base.
Yeah.
You know, so there's different styles. You can flake over silver base or you can flake over black, you know.
And then obviously you guys know I started my business with metal flake way before I started with paint. And we have color flake. Mercado, I don't think you really use color flake. You usually like to use chrome, right?
I use it every now and then. Like I said, my preference is either silver flake. Well, that's actually my preference right there. Is either silver or gold. Yeah. You know, because you could, by shooting any candy over it, you could change it to the color of the flake.
You can manipulate it.
And like I said, those color flakes come in handy if you're shooting like a base coat. If you got like a base coat blue, you can shoot some blue flake over it. You can shoot it over factory colors.
And then when it comes to like burying it, it's not so much clear because usually when you want to bury flake like this, it takes a lot more clear than the usual paint job.
Yes.
Then you got to sand it down, knock down the orange peel, put more clear on it, and go through the process on
Exactly.
that. And then sand it smooth for where you guys have it so you can start laying out the patterns.
Yeah. And it brings us to that stage where the boards that you guys have on your table, they're fully sanded and ready to tape. So there's a couple steps to be able to get into the taping, and it's all part of the custom painting. Yeah. You know, you got to start your flake, sand that down, and then you're ready for candies.
Yeah, the biggest thing is we don't want to mislead anybody and say, all right, cool. All right, start taping. We try to spread it out. This is not hard to do. I really don't think it's very hard. Now, I do see a lot of people out in the field, and you know, I go to a lot of shows, and I'm always out there. I see guys that maybe the flake doesn't look like it should, to be honest with you. It's good, it's okay. I don't want to sound like a hater, but if you want your stuff to really stand out and look badass, this is how it needs to be. You know what I'm saying? And then you want to make sure you can shoot the flake and get them to land a certain way so they dance. Because the last thing you want is a paint job, when you look around, it just looks like a big metallic sheet of paint. You want it where the flakes are standing up. It creates a little bit of texture, and as you're walking around, you can see the flakes dance. Even here, I'm at a really high point. I can tell the flakes are dancing, and that's what really makes a badass paint job.
And what size flake do we use on that?
I believe, if I'm not mistaken, I used the mix. I used 8. That's another thing. I used 8, 15, and a hair of 25. So when you're shooting flakes, and we're going to talk about it in theory, and I'm going to go over this also tomorrow when I'm spraying the panel. Always start with your smaller flakes. So let's say if you're like, dude, I want a full coverage pretty quick, you can mix 004 and 008 together, and that'll be a good foundation. Then you can mix 015 and 25 together, and that can be another one. You never want to
start building up your sizes.
Oh, yeah.
Start small and then work your way up to like the biggest size. Like I said, and Manny offers anywhere from mini flake all the way to the jumbo being the 90. Yeah. You know. Dude, like I said, that's some scary stuff to shoot.
That was because of you.
Yeah. So and because of me, like I said, coming from the Sal Manzano background, he's known for his heavy jumbo flakes, and he's the one that kind of put me on to shooting those and not to be afraid to shoot those big flakes. Requires a little more work, but it's another effect that another option for you guys.
You know it's funny. So when I started the company, all I sold was 008, right? Because I was like, it's 015, it sucks to spray. But I also was spraying another company's metal flake. And it wasn't until I got into this a little bit more and did a lot more research. We say this is metal flake, it's not metal. All my flakes are plastic. They're PET, ultra thin plastic. They're half a mil. They get coated 3 times through a silver bath. So think about chrome on a chrome bumper, triple chrome. So it goes through the copper, it goes through the nickel bath, chrome bath, go nickel, copper, then chrome, and they'll go 2 times. Same process. This is an anodized plastic. Super light, super thin, so it really helps out. But now, because I've seen other metal flake, you look at it, it looks aluminum. So my point was I started painting with 008, and I was, damn, 8's pretty dope. And then 15 was too big. Then I did 25, and then he goes, when I went to San Diego, he's like, hey dude, can you bring any 90? I go, oh, damn, I don't know. Let me see if I can get it cut.
He's like, that's unheard of. You know?
Yeah. And after a phone call and twisting a couple arms, I brought in 90, 60, and 40. And then eventually I invented the flake slinger. And I shot
actually,
it.
for the longest time, it was just always, it was 25, and then you had to jump to 90. So there's never sizes in between that. So when you shoot the 90 on top of the 25, it looks more peppered on than anything.
Yeah,
you know, you got a lot of open space. So now that, you know, Tropo Glitz offers all these existing sizes, it fills in a lot better, and it looks a lot more cleaner as well.
Yeah.
You know? It doesn't even look that much like, it's like super jumbo flake, you know?
That's what I was gonna say. So I shot 90, I shot 40, right? And then when I used to say, oh shit, 15 is too big, 25. Now I look at 25 and I'm like, oh my God, it looks like a
mini flake.
It looks like a mini flake. And then 004 and 008 looks like dust. But because it's perspective. And then since I'm shooting the bigger stuff, I gotten used to it. Inner coat, right? I mix my flake in inner coat. What inner coat is a hybrid. It's between a clear and a binder. It's not a binder, it's not a clear, but it has enough resin to be a clear. That's why we call it inner coat carrier. Or I think we call it inner coat clear. I might have changed it because people think it's a clear coat. I'm like, yo, it's not a clear coat, it's inner coat. But it's the verbiage, they get hung up on the verbiage. Back in the day, when custom painting started, they would paint with lacquer paint, and then they'll mix it in the clear because that stuff didn't exist, and lacquer would melt into each other. And then inner coat didn't exist, people were mixing it just in the clear. One thing, at least for me, when I tell one guy, go, oh, I mix it in the clear, I'm like, it's cool, but it's not the best. You know why? What does clear want to do when you spray clear? It sticks, but it flows out. Clear has flowing agents. Clear wants to flow out. So what happens when it flows out? The metal flake flows out too.
Starts moving.
Yeah, and that's how you get a metallic, like a big metallic paint job, but it doesn't dance. Inner coat, when you shoot the flake, it flows out to a certain point, and then it starts to dry like base coat. Think about it, base coat. When you spray base coat, it dries. That's how you get this effect. So there's guys that say, hey, I shoot it in clear. All right, cool. It helps you bury the flake and all that, but then you end up with a metallic paint. And this is for the online guys. We have Tony, one of our customers, asked, he says, can you mix the inner coat, 3 parts inner coat to 1 part reducer? Was that so he said, can you mix inner coat 3 parts of inner coat to 1 part reducer? You could. And I wouldn't say I recommend it because I've never tested it, pushed it. I've always done it the other way. Because you can mix the inner coat. The inner coat's already thick as it is compared to when you look at binders and stuff like that. It's already thick. So I'm worried that if you mix it that way, you're gonna run into an issue where it ends up cracking or splitting because it's just too much in the millage or the thickness. Well, you can stack up your millage. You know, your millage is how thick paint is. But mixing it like that, you might not have enough of the reducer for it to evaporate and get away from it, because reducer helps it evaporate, takes all the solvents out, and then you get what gets left behind is the resin.
With those bigger flakes, that's where the flake slinger comes in, and you got to apply it dry. Like I said, pretty much out of a spray gun, you could spray 25 no issue. Like, so you can load it up, get full coverage on whatever you're spraying. But once you start spraying the bigger sizes, that's where you got to lay a tack coat first, and then the dry spray gun, the flake gun comes into play. So you can load it up with the 90, you know, all the big sizes, and you just blow it on, and then you just got to top coat it with clear to fully bury it.
So, good question. I can do 10 coats. So the manufacturer, and I push that clear to the limit. I do your regular 15, 20 minutes. I'm also taking into consideration, I'm in South Florida, and I paint in a booth here, or I paint in my garage, or whatever. 15, 20 minutes, right? Once I start going to that 3rd coat, to the 4th coat, 5th coat, I start really giving 30 minutes flash time. You gotta take into consideration, let all that solvent out. The last thing you wanna do is spray it, and then, oh, it looks awesome. And then you come back and it looks kind of hazy, and then what you have is a bunch of little bubbles trapped in between the layers, never came out to give you the solvent pop, but then there's no way to get rid of it. Because at least if you say, yo, I got solvent pop, and you have little craters, you can DA it, you can come in, and you know, there's a way to salvage the project. But when you get that in between, you actually got to rebase it all over again. Temperature, ambient temperature outside, you play around with your reducer and activator. So that's Euroclear that's going around, and that is a 4 to 1 to 1. So you can manipulate, you can change the temperature of the activator, and you can also change the temperature of the reducer. So you're in South Florida, you're in West Palm Beach, Lake Worth. So you should be slow activator and slow reducer. The guys that are in the desert, is very slow, because here it's always like 89, 90, whatever. But if you're like up 95, 98, then you really should do very slow reducer. Everybody else should be medium. Most of the country is
less,
medium.
yeah.
You're in San Diego. What's your temperature in San Diego?
It's pretty much like 70, like all year, maybe 50, depending on the, like towards the winter it gets obviously a little bit colder, so I use like the fast activator just to speed stuff up, just so it could dry, you know?
Yeah. So these boards are, on one side is sharp edge, the other side is tapered, and I'm gonna sand them down. So on DAs, if you guys didn't know, DAs come in different orbital, there you go, different orbitals, you know. You have the aggressive one, your medium, and your coarse. So this one is a medium, and it can tell, when you look at it, it'll tell you a 5mm 316 orbit. So what I'm gonna end up doing is, this stuff sands like powder. It's pretty straightforward. And I'm gonna get a 320. Here I'm using Indasa. You can use whatever you want. This is the brand that I've used for a while. I've liked it. The price point's right. One thing, you don't want to go too much in speed, because sometimes if you go too high in speed, it does not sand well. It ends up just burning up like clogging up the sandpaper. So let's get into shot here. Wait up, make it easier. So I'm gonna just sand this, give it a nice DA. We're gonna end up doing 2 panels like I said earlier on. And I'm gonna go back and forth. I'm keeping the panel flat. We're gonna do 1 panel in black sealer. Well, we're gonna actually spray both panels in black sealer. One is gonna get sprayed in Comet Silver. That's the really high metallic metal flake base coat. Now that base coat's mixed 1-to-1 with our reducer. It's a polyester base. And then our reducer, I have people ask us, it's like, oh, is it urethane? Everything is urethane, you know? But I think what happens, a lot of people ask us, they're in different industries. So like, maybe they're in aviation or they're in wood finish. I want you guys to look at this from the camera. Sands extremely well. Now I'm not gonna blow this off, because if I start blowing this off, I'm gonna create a big dust mess and contaminate my environment. So what I'm gonna end up doing is sanding this one too. And then I'm pretty generous with pre-cleaner, because that's one thing you should be, because you can't go wrong with pre-cleaner. If you're really cheapy with your pre-cleaner, you're gonna get fish eye, you're gonna get a bunch of stuff, and your panel's gonna look like crap. Now, one thing you always wanna do, have gloves, and when you do this in an enclosed space, do yourself a favor, wear a mask. Here I can't really smell it because everything's getting extracted right out. This stuff does give you cancer. So I'm gonna come here and wipe down in one direction and wipe down in another direction. Really important, because you don't want to scrub this stuff into the grain of the panel or the car or whatever you're doing. And then I come back, do it again, and fold it down. So I'm done with this one. I'm gonna do the same exact thing on this one. So when I was growing up, I used to get the air blower and blow everything, but then I make a mess and it just gets everywhere. Versus this, I can just spray it. Wax and grease remover has a little bit of a lubricant as a solvent. It's one of the solvents that's made. It's not lubricant like the lubricant you guys are thinking of, like oil, but it's a lubricant to help lift up anything that's dust related or grease, and then it pretty much, the molecules are loosened up and you can slide it right off the panel or wipe it off the panel. Now I sanded this on the face. There's a contour, and you want to make sure you want to sand the edges. So I'm just going to get my 320. You can do it with your hand, never with your fingers like this. I kind of like to go like this. And just a little kiss, nothing crazy. Since this material sands extremely well, I just want enough so I can get an adhesion on it. And because the last thing I want to do is flake this out, it looks great, and then it starts delaminating on the edge. The word delaminating means loss of adhesion. And it can come in a couple of different ways. You can get a bubble, and then when you pop the bubble, it just comes off like a hard-boiled egg. Or it looks like it lifts up on an edge, and when you go like that, it just peels off like dip paint. You guys ever seen dip paint peel off on a car? It sucks. I already did the edges. I didn't go crazy. I didn't put a power tool. I went with a regular DA. Now, you also can use, let's say a sponge. The same way I use this, they make a bunch of other stuff. Sometimes you can get these are little Indasa sponges. I like these things. They're badass. The fact is that You can crumble them up, you put water and soap, wash them, they're reusable, but they are a good cushion when it comes to a surface like that, where you're like, oh, when you're worried and maybe your hands or whatever, you can put this in. It's gonna really contour this, and even if I go like this, I know for a fact I'm getting that whole radius on that, and I'm gonna get a nice even sand everywhere. This is 4 to 1 to 1. So that means 4 parts of the sealer, 1 part of the activator, and a 1 part of reducer, or vice versa. It doesn't matter as long as 1 part. You want to make sure you mix this very well. Sometimes if you throw in a mixing stick and you pull it out and you see it's chunky like this, you still have a lot of the pigments and the ingredients in the bottom. No bueno, that means no good. Don't do that to yourself, because then what happens is you're painting, you're pouring out of the top of the can, and all you're pouring out is all your solvents. You're not pouring out any of the talc or the filler or anything else on it, and that's going to create problems for you. So on this one, it's 4 1 to 1. I'm going to see, I don't really need a lot, so I say I'm going to mix maybe 3 ounces. I'm just going to be a little conservative on the amount. So another thing I want to say, you don't want to have your panel super smooth and say, oh, I'm going to get my paint job's going to look awesome because I'm going to sand it 600, I'm going to put paint on it. No, you're not going to have a great paint job because the paint job's going to peel because there's no mechanical adhesion. You have to have a bite. That's why I sanded that with 320, because I know that there's enough of a mechanical bite on that 320 for the sealer to lock into the plastic and then stack on top. So we got 4 parts here. Now I'm adding the catalyst. So now what happens is I already have this mix. I'm gonna put my mask here, close this bad boy up, mix this in. Now I add a catalyst to this. I don't have that much time. You don't wanna start dicking around with this because it will cure inside your cup and or get gummy and mess up the whole project. So this strainer is what I'm gonna use. It doesn't fit, so what I usually like to do is fold this bad boy up, crease it, and now I can put it in here real safe. The net is past the bottom. And then these are little tricks, man. Like, you might say, bro, what is this guy talking about? But you'd be surprised, all these things that you pick up over time, it makes your life a lot easier. Now this D cup, I already put a liner. Pour it in. Strain it, put this bad boy in. Cool. So for the sealer, I'm going to spray it out of my LPH 300. It's an Awada. It's a 1.4. You want to make sure you want to shoot sealer out of a 1.4, 1.3. You want to shoot this or mimic this like if you're shooting a base coat, because if you don't shoot this well, because I'm doing this wet on wet, I'm not going to sand the sealer, so I want this to lay out as smooth as possible so my base coat mimics the sealer finish. Now a paint gun has, some guys know this, some guys don't, but a paint gun has your trigger. Here's, on this one, here's a choke-off valve. It actually closes the amount of air on your paint gun. This is your fluid nozzle material. This is how much material you want. It's like a stopper for the trigger. And this is your fan control. So usually I like to blow off stuff. Now in the production world, when I worked at the body shops, we would run a tack cloth and all this good stuff. Usually on a lot of this stuff we don't have to do that. I'm doing a big project, I will. So good thing, I'm looking at my fan pattern. And now I'm gonna go to town. All right, you guys still hear me over the compressor? So I gave it a coat already. Now I'm going to come back and just close up my edges. and do the edge so we have a little bit of a paint on the edges. Now I'm closing my fan here. Now my air pressure went up. What I'm gonna do is close my air pressure knob down. All right, I should not have pretty much, maybe have a little bit more. What I'm gonna end up doing is coming back, giving another coat on this bad boy real quick, just to use up what I have, and then we're gonna show you on the camera how it looks. Can you guys smell any paint outside of the class? Perfect, then the booth is working. All right, now that's done. Now if you guys notice, at no time I'm like this with the holes. At all time I have the holes stretched out right against my body. Or if you're painting a hood or a roof, you can also throw it over here, grab it here. I've seen back in the day when I used to paint a lot and it was killing me and I needed my arm for anything else, I would actually run tape against my body and give me a little slap to move around. But I'm just painting the panel. But you always want to have this air hose against your body because it's real simple. You painting and this bad boy just runs right across your project, touches it, ruins it. So I'm here like this, always around my chest, having this pretty much mimic, and I'm keeping everything parallel. You don't see me going like this. I'm keeping my gun nice and even. Rule of thumb is you want your fan 6 inches of distance, right? You want your fan pretty much from the bottom base of your palm to the top of your fingers. That's how wide you want the fan. And from the distance of the panel. From here, same thing. You want to be around this. I got big hands, so you want to keep a little bit of a distance because you want this to give you enough of a distance for it to atomize. Atomize means that it breaks down the particles of the paint to get a smooth finish. If you have not enough air pressure, you're going to get orange peel. Orange peel means it didn't atomize, and then you end up with these big droplets everywhere. So you want it to atomize well, and you also want to pay attention to how much paint. If you have too much paint, too wet, and then you run into issues. You don't have enough paint, it's gonna look like crap and be dry dusted. As you guys can see on the camera, see how some parts look wet and some parts look already flat? The flat parts are evaporating, all the reducer salt coming off, and the wet parts still have solvent and it's little by little coming off. We're gonna wait for this to flash off. It might be 10 minutes, give or take, but I'll start moving into mixing the flake. So common silver is another 1-to-1. I close my lid, and this is how I usually pour out my paint so I don't get a mess and control. I've been doing it for a while. I just kind of pop open one side and then pour it out like this.
Yeah.
You see how it's not pouring out? Now I'll come, let me see if I mix this. And then I'll come here with my little, you can get this anywhere, Home Depot, Lowe's, whatever. Opens beer on one side supposedly and a paint can on the other. And then from here, I just like pop it open. And I have complete control of my paint. So I'm gonna mix this 1-to-1. Now that I'm getting close to the number, I'll come, let it go a little bit, and put pressure on it, and I'm done. What paint do I have on the edge of my can? You guys see that? Very little, and then I don't run a risk of having any paint. The worst thing you can have is tons of paint build up on your can, and then your can doesn't seal properly, and your paint gets ruined. So I have here that. Same thing, Ed, we're gonna shoot with slow. It's 85 with, here it says 90% humidity. So we're pretty much maxed out. So I'm at the 3, now I'm gonna go to the other 3 on the 1-to-1. Notice how I'm pouring my can. The hole is on top. So I seen people pour paint and they go like this and it's glug, glug, glug because now the paint or reducer is trying to come out, but air is trying to come in and you end up splashing everything. Turn your can like this. Actually creates a pocket of air to come in and you get a way better control and it's very smooth and you don't have an issue with everything going everywhere. So these are little 3-ounce D cups from the Vilbis. I like them because they're hard, it's easy to reuse. And this holds 3 ounces, so let's see how far we're gonna go with this. And let's move this out of the way. So this is wet on wet sealer. Let's say you get garbage in your sealer, like, oh man, I got a piece of garbage or mosquito. Not at the end of the world, you can come with a Scotch pad or you can come with sandpaper and sand it. But in this case, because we mixed it 4:1 to 1, it's gonna have a chemical adhesion to it and we don't have to worry about it.
My material knob is all the way out and that's gonna create a problem. When you spray silvers
or anything high metallic and you spray them too wet, you're gonna get what we call malting. It means that all the metallics kind of sit together and it looks blotchy. Another thing you have to realize in painting, if you spray the paint too wet and it has metallics, it's going to get darker. You guys still hear me with the compressor on? All right, so when you spray the base coat too wet, it will get darker. The metallics will sink to the bottom and everything looks darker. And if you spray it too dry or light, it'll get lighter because now the metallics sit on the surface of the paint. So on this case, we're gonna actually shoot this pretty nice and wet, and I'm gonna come back and give it a drop coat. Drop coat means while the paint is still wet, I pull the distance of my gun off and really let the metallics sit on top to get them to dance. When it comes to spraying metallics, silvers, pearls, there's a certain way to paint them and effectively. Naturally, if you spray the paint too wet, the metallics will fall down and become darker. If you spray it too dry, they sit on top and look lighter. Same thing when you're painting particular custom cars or whatever, and you're like, hey dude, I bought a gallon of paint, I painted the car, but now it looks darker because I painted the door today and the fender tomorrow. Yeah, because you didn't paint at the same time. Your air pressure wasn't the same, your material knob wasn't the same, your temperature wasn't the same. All that plays a factor. So when it comes to custom painting, when you're doing bigger projects, everything needs to be painted at the same time, or you need to be really good at what you're doing.
all right. All right, guys, so I'm gonna get down. Look at one coat on the edge. Now, I'm gonna continue to spray and make sure I get a nice even pass.
You guys you saw what I did? I went around it nice and wet. And then I came back and did a little drop coat. Now what I'm gonna do is let that dry off, make sure everything looks nice and even, and then from there do another coat, and then we're gonna let that flash off and we're gonna pass the board around so everybody can see what Comet Silver looks like and the effect that it gives. As of right now, you can see some blotchiness. Tell me if you guys can see the blotchiness on the TV. How much blotchiness? But now, this is Comet Silver. Do you see really metallic? Does it look very flaky to you guys? That's one coat. Now by the time I come back with a second coat, I'm done. Everything's pretty much covered. Now I'm gonna let it flash off. You can see it's still wet now. I could have said, oh crap, I don't want that. Keep on fighting it, trying to keep on shooting more and more. It's gonna make it worse. It's gonna take even longer. So now I'm gonna let it flash off. This is gonna take a little bit to flash off, but it's not the end of the world. Most probably what I'm gonna end up doing is, as that's flashing off, I'm gonna put it to the back and start mixing up flake and shooting the next panel with metal flake. So we're gonna mix up a couple different sizes of metal flake. So what I'm gonna end up doing is being a little bit more generous with the inner coat, because as I start shooting my small flake, I'll keep on using the same inner coat and adding the bigger flake to it. And then most probably I'll grab another cup and just sprinkle on the 40 with 25. And that'll give you a pretty dope effect. One thing that's important is the consistency of your metal flake mixture. So that was our inner coat. This is our slow reducer. Same thing, look how I pour it out. Boom. This inner coat was clean. Now, if it was dirty or had garbage or maybe a piece of dried inner coat was in the mixture, I would have strained it into another cup and go from there. So let's do this. I might need a lot more flake, but we'll do 004. So give everybody online and you guys there. This is 16 ounces of ready to spray inner coat. Here's a jar. Boom. That's maybe half, and that's not gonna be enough. So I'm gonna mix this. And that's where I'm at. Now I'm gonna come and open the next one. Now, I've had this question over the years, how much, how many grams per ounces? I don't know even tell you, I just go by feel and by look. Now we're gonna do 006, same thing. This is where I'm at. Now we're gonna go 008. So these I can get away with mixing a lot of them together. Now I'm gonna put it out. Depending how my paint stick looks, it's gonna be how it sprays on the first coat. Now we're gonna go a little bit more 08. And a little bit more of the 004. The 004 really does help with coverage and filling in the gaps. So you see that paint stick? You guys see the paint stick, how it looks? You see how I take it in and out? That's how the first coat's gonna be. So I have here 004, 006, and 08. And then I already have a liner here set up and my D cup. One of the reasons I love shooting metal flake in this stuff, I can turn the gun upside down and not worry about it clogging. Because if you have a regular aluminum cup, it's gonna clog. Now another trick you can go to a hardware store and get some tornillos, bolts, so you can use it as an agitator to agitate everything. So here we go. And all right, so now I'm gonna start applying metal flake onto the panel. This is full coverage, and I'm gonna do one coat, and we should get pretty good coverage. And then from there, I'll start stacking and mixing into the same mixture, the bigger stuff, and then I'll leave the 40 towards the end. So we have only clean 40 on top of the panel, and we don't have any of the smaller stuff, because you'll notice it more on the, see, when we mixed 4, 6, and 8, you really can't tell what's sitting on top, but you do have that grainy texture to it. And when you do 15 and 25, same exact thing. But the moment you start doing 25 and 8 and all that with 40, they start landing on top of the 40, and it looks dirty, and it doesn't give you the clean sparkle. It kind of looks kind of whack.
All right, so I have the gun upside down. I always like to keep it upside down so all the metallics come, and as I'm painting, shake this bad boy. Same thing, open my fan all the way. Look at that. Can you see it good, guys?
That's full coverage over black, one coat. I have the material now pretty much closed off. This is how it should look if you do it right. You mix it the way I mixed and the way I shot it. No reason for it not to look like this. And on top of that, I didn't shoot a lot of material, because if you start shooting a lot of material, then you start running into a lot of problems. Now, I'll let that flash off. I'm gonna do the edges, come back, cross hatch it, just to give me a drop coat and call it a day, because I do see a little bit of a little dark streak here. That's what one benefit when you do it over black, you kind of see it. But as the first coat, this is what you should get in the first coat. Now on the second coat, what I'm gonna end up doing is mixing in, dumping this back out and mixing in more of the bigger sizes with this, and we start getting more of effect. Or if you say, hey, I don't wanna do that, I wanna just mix a fresh batch of inner coat and mix in your 15 and 25, you can also do that too. So now I'm gonna close my fan and make it a little circle. Air pressure goes up, look at that. Now I'm gonna close this down.
Look how far back I get now, because now it's dumping a lot more material. This is how a lot of old school painters paint. They'll come like that. I don't like doing it that much because you run the risk of putting a streak of paint, a streak of metal flake. But when you take paint classes from the older guys, that's how they were able to paint metal flake back in the day, just because they didn't have the equipment or the guns to do it. You know, they were drilling out these nozzles to get all this big material out. All right, perfect.
All right. How does that look, guys? Better? Any malting? No blotchiness? So I sprayed my silver. I did real quick a little drop coat because I really wanted to have that real nice metallic effect. And now that's how it should look. Chill. We're going to get, back up a little bit. We want to show the online now. Everybody that's online, the one that's on the right, the young lady's holding, move it around for me, Miss Laish. That is full coverage over black sealer. The one on the left that Mr. Mercado's holding, that is 25% to 50% rough over silver coverage. That's the difference. They're both the same exact metal flake mix. Nothing's different from any of the two, just because one is just more metal flake on black. All right, come on, cool. So I'm gonna just pepper on a little bit of the 40 on this so you guys can see what's up. I push the solvent, I push the bag in, just in case it gives me an insurance. So if it clogs, what I end up doing is I put my finger over it and the bag will inflate and it blows everything out. But if I start with a bag completely full, that bag's gonna pop and I'm gonna be covered in inner coat. It's gonna be my eyes and metal flake everywhere and it's not fun.
Yep. Done. And now what I'm going to do is put a little air, close my circle, make it like a little round material lump. This is when the big flake comes into play like this. This is when you use this because it creates a nice wet bed and the metal flake sits nice on it. Boom. Woo! That shit looks awesome. It really does. When I do that, it's not because I'm... This looks awesome.
And it's exactly... So I closed my material up to the circle. There was the only way to get something that big out. You had to close it because if you have it in a fan, it comes out, but it's trying to atomize and it doesn't look that great. So I'm going to put this bad boy upside down because I don't want to clog my gun. If you're using a 2.5, it's really hard to clog it. But the same thing, a disposable cup, having the gun upside down, using our inner coat, because you can use a mixing binder from a mixing bank, but you do run the risk of it clogging and delaminating. But I do think the smartest thing is mix a couple of different sizes, helps out if you're not used to spraying metal flake. I spray metal flake a lot and I like spraying metal flake, so to me, mixing a concentrated version of 15 is cool, but the smaller sizes do fill in the spots if you saw earlier on with the other board.